Welcome to this talk. It's about Buildship. Who here knows more or less what Gradle and Buildship is? Please just raise your hands. All right, okay, so I don't have to go to the very basics explaining what are these tools. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Donát Csikós. I'm an engineer at Gradle. I'm working in the tooling team, and more or less I'm the only one who works full-time on this project. Okay, before we get started, I would like to give just a little bit of timeline, what's going to happen today and what happened before. So last time we were here, it was in 2016, giving a talk about Buildship. And since then, well, kind of a lot happened. Shortly after the presentation, we released Buildship 2.2, which was followed by 2 additional releases. And right now, we are working on Buildship 3.0, which we plan to include in the upcoming Eclipse release. So the bottom line is that we have lots of features, which we haven't demoed yet, and this is what I'm trying to do today. Before we can dive in, I want to spend a few minutes on just what's the state of the project. We are still part of the release train. Buildship is installed by default in 3 major packages. I think it's Eclipse for Java developers, Eclipse for committers, and Eclipse for Java EE. We have an active community. Most of the communication is done on the main Gradle forum, and we also get a lot of questions and even pull requests on the Buildship GitHub repository. We have healthy download numbers. On the marketplace, Buildship is the 16th most installed plugin, plus we have a fair share of downloads each month in our update sites. If the download statistics tool is correct, so in September it was 600,000, a bit more. Okay, so I actually cherry-picked a couple of features which I'm going to present today. First, the features from the 2.x branch. Then I'm going to jump to the 3.0 features. So I prepared a couple of demos, and yeah. So let's first talk about the feature we call hierarchical preferences. So here we have an Eclipse with Buildship 2.0 installed, and I just want to show why we actually added preferences, like the way we implemented. Also, if I import a sample project, and yeah, I just have an example project here, and say I want to use a custom distribution. Well, this time let's choose, I don't know, 4.10 for this project. And if I import it, I hope it's gonna finish soon. Sometimes it can be much slower. So this was the only time. So in this import wizard, this was the only time when I could change this preference. And this is kind of bad. There is no UI, and yeah, there is a way. Actually, there is a way to change the preferences, but it's kind of cryptic. I actually have to re-import the project. And there, if I do the same, I just use, I don't know, 4.10.2 and import the project again. Nothing changes except the internal preferences. But the problem is I don't have any feedback how it works. So we changed that in Buildship 2.1, I think. Yeah. And if I do the same here, okay, I have example project. Okay, let's do 4.10.1, that's fine. And then I will show the actual preferences, what we did. So first, there is a workspace preference page, what we added. And there you can configure the Gradle distribution and a bunch of other stuff for all the projects in the workspace. Yeah. Then I have an option on the specific Gradle projects to say, I want to use everything that's defined in the workspace settings, or I can say, well, for this particular Gradle build, I want to use, I don't know, 4.10. And the same goes for run configurations. If I go to build, I just want to execute a simple task to generate a run configuration. And there we have the same sort of preferences. So if I go to the project settings, I can say, okay, I want to override or I want to inherit these settings. And if I change it, let's say 4.10.1. If I run this Gradle build, in the console I can see that 4.10.1 is picked up. So that's hierarchical preferences. Okay, so the next one, I think it should be, yeah, the runtime class path separation. So for a long time, Eclipse had just one class path per project, and for a long time it was fine. but with new features and frameworks, it became more and more problematic. What we did in Buildship, I think until 2.2, basically we took the source sets from the Gradle build information and we just merged them into one and then set it for each project. And that was really problematic for tools like Spring Boot, for instance, because there the configuration is loaded from the runtime class path. And when you have this merge of source sets, then you might end up using the wrong configuration during runtime. So what we did to fix this issue is that we implemented a custom runtime class path provider, which basically looks into the Gradle project configuration and filters out the unrelated entries from the runtime class path, depending on which class was executed via JDT. Okay, let me show it, how it looks like. I mean, yeah, let's just find a very simple case. Well, I will implement a simple main method, which will print out a name of a class. Let's say this out, and there I use the name of the same class. That's the simplest case. There we go. And if I execute it, nothing specific will happen, nothing special will happen. It will just print out the name of the class, as you would expect. But if I do the same with a class, which is located in the test source set, src test java, then I will get a class not found exception, which is what we are looking for here. Let me just do it quickly. Java application, boom, class not found exception. And that's actually a proper use case. So this is, well, not ideal, and there could be better ways to do it, but at least we could fix it for all supported Eclipse versions what we have. So I think you can install Buildship for Eclipse 4.3 and upwards. One thing to mention is that we are aware that there is this new feature in Eclipse Photon, which is called test sources, where you can do a similar thing, but for compile time, and we actually plan to implement this, but that will also only work for the newest versions. So this runtime class path separation works for old versions, and then the test sources will work for the newer ones. Okay, build scans. Who heard of build scans before? Well, okay, a few people. So build scans is a free service from Gradle, and it's basically a tool to, a build scan itself, it's a recording of a build that provides insights, what happened and why in your builds. You can use it to analyze your environment, what tasks were executed, what was the performance of your build, and a lot of other stuff. It's a free central service, anybody can use it, and if your project or your company doesn't allow to use such services, there is an on-premise enterprise version, which offers a lot more. But the thing is, this is not the context, this is not the right place to talk about this, because I can spend, I don't know, another hour just talking about the features. So this is a web-based service. So in Buildship, what we can do, and what we actually did, is to provide support to easily publish scans and access the build scans. Oops. Okay, so going back to the IDE, the first thing is that, oops, I don't want that. Okay, the coverage is not useful now. So the first thing is that we have preferences for generating automatically build scans. If I go to the project settings, I can say, okay, for this particular build, please generate a build scan for me. And same goes for the project settings. I can set it here too. And in the workspace, yeah, I can set the build scans for every project in the workspace. So sticking with the run configuration, if I launch this Gradle build now, it will generate a scan for me. Okay, and if it finishes, then I have a link at the end of my build saying publishing build scan, and I have a link to the scan. We also added a little enhancement to the console that you can now click the links here. So if I click on it, I can check what happened inside my build. If it loads, I'm tutoring via my phone. Okay, it works. So you can see the timeline, what tasks were executed, what task took how much time, and in our case, the build failed. That's why you see so much red. And I can just go to the log, checking like, hey, okay, from my previous example, I added something which is not valid in Gradle, therefore there is a compilation error. So that's one thing. And the other, what we added is just another small enhancement. We have now a new action in the executions view toolbar saying open build scan. This appears only when a build scan is generated, then when it gets enabled, if I click on it, it will open up the same build scan. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. Okay, so these were the features I wanted to present for the Buildship 2.x branch. And now let's talk about what's coming in Buildship 3.0. Yeah, on the slides, I have the details, but I would like to have the demo. Instead, it's more visual. You can experience it some more. Yeah, so let me just show Buildship 2.0 how it handles broken projects. And for that, I will just add an invalid statement in the build script. Here be dragons. And if I delete this project, something bad happens if I try to import it again. So if I do the import and import the same project, first of all, the preview page will be broken. It will show an ugly exception dialog, which is annoying by itself. Yes, this is just kind of ugly. But the biggest problem is what happens after I click finish. Because if I click finish, first of all, I get the same dialog, which is not nice. But also, the workspace is empty. So the usual use case for Buildship 2.2 was that try to import a project, fix something on a command, try to fix something on a command line. If there is a failure, then try again to import it, and rinse and repeat until it finishes. And this is something we really wanted to fix for a while now. Okay, so let's do the same for Buildship 3.0. Again, just put some invalid statement here. Okay, and if I delete and re-import this project, the experience will be slightly better. So let's import the project with the usual import wizard. We have the example project, which is called Exemplar. That's a cool project, by the way. I just wanted to mention that. And okay, let's use the workspace settings. That's fine. First of all, we no longer show a dialog box just to make it look better. And now you get the stack trace within the preview dialog. And then, when you import the project, you will see two things. The root project is imported. And when the synchronization finishes, then I won't get the dialog, I will get an error marker. That's a specific error marker for Gradle. It says Gradle error marker. It tells me the message, why it failed, and I can actually check the properties for that. I have the message with the failure, and I can inspect the whole stack trace. Alone, it's not that important, but what's really cool is that now we have the location information, because Buildship was able to extract this information from the stack trace. So if I double click on it, then I actually know where this problem comes from. So I can quickly fix the problem, and if I call synchronize on the project, then all the subprojects get imported, and the error marker disappears. Yeah. Synchronization finished, and the workspace now looks fine. Okay, broken projects. Public API, that's the other thing which we are working now. So the big problem for Buildship was that for a long time, actually for all existing releases, we had 0 public APIs. So we implemented everything internally, and we just said, well, if you depend on Buildship, that's bad. I mean, that's your responsibility to fix it. But it turns out that there are a lot of projects who actually depend on Buildship. I know that the Spring tooling, they offer Gradle support for Spring Boot projects. I think JDT.ls uses Buildship to provide classpath for Gradle projects. And I think Liferay has some deal with Buildship. I'm not certain about the specifics. So we decided to clean all this up and just provide a proper public API for all the projects, for all the downstream dependencies. So we asked for feedback, on our issue tracker, and we actually got the feedback. It was not that surprising, because basically the answer was that please provide APIs for all the stuff what Buildship does, which is synchronizing the workspace with the Gradle build and executing tasks. So this is what we did. We implemented these APIs in Buildship 3.0. The first one is project synchronization. There, the idea is simple. You, downstream dependencies want to specify a project. They want to import it to the workspace or synchronize existing projects with the workspace. Okay, here how it looks. Here is how it looks. So all the public APIs, for all the public APIs, we created a service called Gradle Workspace, and that's how you access all our APIs. For importing a project, you need a thing called build configuration. It's just a tiny helper class, which by default requires a root project directory from where the Gradle project should be imported. And then you have a bunch of, do you see my cursor? Yeah, okay. And then you have a bunch of optional configuration. If this project needs to override or inherit the workspace configuration, to use a specific Gradle distribution, and some more. And with this configuration, I can say, well, okay, create a build with this configuration, which gives you the Gradle build reference to the Gradle build. And this one doesn't do anything alone, it's just a reference to a Gradle build. And if you go synchronize on this build, that's when the synchronization happens. The same goes for, or similar thing goes for existing projects. You can use the Gradle workspace to get a build based on an I project, and it checks if this project is a valid Buildship project, and then returns a present value. And if you get it, then you can just call synchronize again, and it has the same effect. The next one, the next API we implemented is for task execution. Here it's a little bit interesting because you could technically do it without Buildship at all. So basically you could do what Buildship does already. It depends on a library called tooling API, which is a subproject from Gradle, and then you could just do the same thing. I can show it very quickly. You could create a project connection, you configure it with the root project directory, and with this on this connection you can call new build. You say which tasks you want to execute, you set a standard output, and you just run it. It's just a few lines of code, nothing special. Problem is, actually this part, this output, for instance, because we are talking about an IDE, and it would be nice to actually have a bunch of stuff configured for this project connection. You need inputs, you need outputs, progress logging, cancellation, and some more. So it's already available on Buildship, but if you want to implement it without Buildship, then you have to recreate the same things what we already have available, and that's not ideal. It's just too much work for any plugins to do that. So what we decided to do, we decided to add a with connection method to the Gradle build interface, so the same interface what we had before. You can call with connection, and with that you can basically call the same tooling API methods, but the objects what you get via this with connection method, they are already pre-configured to reuse the UI elements from Buildship. So it's much easier to do it this way. You can actually do much more with this API because the tooling API is capable of doing much more. For instance, like listing the available tasks, you can load custom models, can inject a custom script into your builds. I don't want to go into details, but we added a detailed Java doc to this method so that you can actually implement it very easily. Yeah, just check out the documentation. We have pretty good examples there. How this API looks, it's very basic. You get the I project for like the usual way. You get the reference to the Gradle workspace, just like before. You get the Gradle build, just like before. And then the connection method takes a function which receives a project connection instance. And within this function, you can just write plain tooling API code. So it's pretty simple, yet powerful. Okay, that concludes the second API. And the last one is project configurators. Now, this is useful for tooling providers who want to basically extend the Gradle synchronization mechanism. So basically, we provided an extension point where you can implement a simple interface where you add your additional project configuration for your project, for the Gradle projects. The interface itself, it looks quite simple. You just have you have to implement the project configurator interface. There you have 3 methods: init, configure, unconfigure. Simple as that. The init method is executed before the synchronization runs. Configure and unconfigure is executed for each workspace project that is associated with the Gradle build. Or in case of unconfigure, it's executed in the use case when the Gradle workspace project or the workspace project gets unassociated from a Gradle build. Yeah, this is what we have for Buildship 3.0. And now let's talk a little bit about what's coming next. Yes, please. Yes. Yes. So, for instance, if you want to implement language support for C++, which needs Gradle, then you would use this extension to read some information from the Gradle build and then set up each project as you want. Okay, Buildship 3.1 and onwards. So basically what we do here, it's not really surprising. We have an open bug tracker, and every time we do a planning for an upcoming project, we just list the open issues what we have, and we sort the issues by most reactions, so the most thumbs up what people give. And yeah, basically the trick is that we just select the top one. So you can expect that for the next release, a big feature will be, well, the first 2 are the same, so it will be running tasks during synchronization. And Buildship 3.2 most probably will have debugging support, and so on and so forth. So the takeaway here is basically just that go ahead, check out our issue tracker, and if you find something which you are passionate about, or if you want something to get implemented, put your thumbs up there, because it gives us feedback and helps us prioritize what we're going to work on next. Excuse me? The top issue is 20-something, I believe. It's around the 20s, yeah. So yeah, this is pretty much what I wanted to say. Please go ahead and try out the latest 3.0 snapshot. It's pretty stable, and we really need some feedback, especially concerning the APIs, because of course we have some ideas how these APIs will be used, but of course live users will give us much better feedback. If you're interested in BuildScans and Gradle Enterprise, there are the links. I will publish the slides after the conference. I guess it's automatic. I don't know, but I will make sure you will have access to it. And don't hesitate to reach out to us. We have the Gradle forums, and we are pretty active there. Also, if you are interested in the domain of build systems, then check out our careers page. We have a pretty interesting working environment, because everybody works remotely, or mostly, and so nobody is located to a specific place. So that being said, thanks for your time. Thanks for being here.